All right, welcome into a special edition of Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. My name is Chase Sr., a special edition because I am coming to you from the site of Super Bowl 59, the Superdome in New Orleans. Philadelphia Eagles getting set to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And coming up here on the show, the Eagles just ended their media session for Super Bowl opening night. We set out all across the field that the Eagles and the Chiefs will be playing on, and we interviewed a bunch of Eagles players and Eagles coaches. I caught up with General Manager Howie Roseman. I'm going to play some of the best clips at the end of the show. But in the meantime, I want to pass along some observations, some things that I gathered boots on the ground here in New Orleans. We will be here all throughout the week providing you with great coverage for Super Bowl 59. So be sure to lock us in. Hit that subscribe button. North of 105,000 subs. Join the movement for the best Eagles coverage right here on YouTube. Let's begin on the injury front. As we know, in the NFC Championship game against the Washington Commanders, Cam Jurgens tried to play in that game. Worked out pregame, dealing with that back injury that he suffered against the Los Angeles Rams in the divisional round. And he had a conversation with some Eagles trainers as well as General Manager Howie Roseman, and they came to the decision to not have Cam Jurgens start. He was active in that game, and as we know, he ended it at the center position for Philadelphia as they punched their ticket to Super Bowl 59, playing for their second Lombardi Trophy in 3 years. During the week of practice, Landon Dickerson, a stellar left guard for Philadelphia, was getting reps at center with Tyler Steen, a former third-round pick out of Alabama by way of Vanderbilt, was getting reps at left guard. Dickerson ended up starting at center, Steen at left guard. They both played pretty well in those new positions. They played a big role in Saquon Barkley going 60 yards to the end zone on his opening touch of the NFC title game. But in that first half, Dickerson hurt his knee. Did not come back in the second half because he couldn't. And so what happened? Even though the Eagles did not start Cam Jurgens, he still was active in that game. He finished it out. When he was walking off the field with the back, Dickerson with the knee, they clearly looked hobbled. They clearly looked banged up. Well, I just had an opportunity to catch up with both players. And specifically with Cam Jurgens, he said, I don't talk about injuries. I'm not going to get into the specifics or the details of what I'm dealing with. We asked him if he was going to play against Kansas City. He said, I'm not going to tell you that and reveal my decision or where I'm at in my recovery from this back injury. But he did say something with a smile. He said, I'm out here standing up and I'm doing interviews with the media. And so take that for what it's worth. But if Cam Jurgens wasn't playing in this game, if the back injury was really bothering him, I don't think that he would be out here standing around for about an hour. On the scoreboard, they counted it down from 60 minutes. Jurgens was out here taking questions, chopping it up with people for the duration of that time period. So I would be very surprised if he doesn't play. And then I watched Landon Dickerson walk around with that knee injury, no limp. And obviously it's different from playing in a game where he'd have to get in his set on pass pro and run block. But he wasn't walking with a limp at all. And he went over to do an interview with Ross Tucker. And Ross Tucker and him chopped it up for a little while. And it looked as though Landon Dickerson was feeling good in a spot with that knee injury. So I would be surprised if Jurgens at center, Dickerson at left guard do not play against Kansas City. Of course, the big question is, how healthy will they be? They have to stop an interior Chiefs defensive line that is very good. And the Chiefs are able to generate pressure with four, led by defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, led by Chris Jones, a generational player at that defensive tackle spot. But then you have players along that front like Mike Danny. You have a player like Charles Omenihu who can play defensive end and defensive tackle. They do a lot of mixing and matching up front to try to confuse the opposing offense. And Chris Jones is one of the most dominant players in the entire National Football League. Even though he's been in the league for a while, he is not slowing down. So that is going to be a tall test and a tall task for both Jurgens and Dickerson But what Spags likes to do as well is put, just like the Commanders put Frankie Louvu over the center spot, sometimes they do that with Nick Bolton. And so I think Dickerson and Juergens are going to play, but how healthy are they going to be? And this Chiefs defense is also top 10 against the run in yards per rush given up per game and yards per carry given up. It's a spectacular defense, which is a lot better than the defense that we saw in Super Bowl 57. So that's an injury update on Cam Juergens and an injury update on Landon Dickerson. Next up, let's talk about Nick Sirianni here and how he is preparing his team to be better equipped and more prepared to play the Chiefs here in Super Bowl 59 compared to Super Bowl 57. I think when you look at this Eagles roster, they are better than they were in 2022. The offensive line is better. You still have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. They are more experienced. The Eagles in that Super Bowl against Kansas City back in Arizona did not have a ground game at all. Jalen Hurts ran for more than 70 yards, but Miles Sanders pretty much got benched, and Kenneth Gainwell didn't get a lot of action, nor did he have a lot of success. Now the Eagles have the Offensive Player of the Year and the player who should be the MVP for this football team in Saquon Barkley. And so even though Jalen Hurts didn't have the same level of success throwing it this year compared to 2 years ago, when he's been asked to do that, he's found success. I thought when Kellen Moore put a lot on his plate in throwing it against Washington, Hurts was great. When Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni put a lot on his plate against the Steelers, an elite defense at the time, Jalen Hurts carved them up. And so Jalen Hurts, high school, college, pros, he steps up when the lights are the brightest, when the stage is the greatest, when the pressure is on in these big games. And if Jalen Hurts can play and throw it like he did against Washington in the NFC Championship game, I think that the Eagles are going to be able to bring home their second Lombardi Trophy since 2017. And going into that point and expanding on that, with this Eagles team being better than they were 2 years ago, the defense is so much better with their defensive line. Jalen Carter is one of the most dominant forces in all of football. Even though the Eagles had 70 sacks 2 years ago, they had no sacks of Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl game. And so I think this defensive line doesn't have the sack numbers, but they're better, they're faster, they're more physical, they're younger. They have players who can chase down the likes of Patrick Mahomes. And I think they're a little bit deeper along that front. They were very old along that defensive line in Super Bowl 57. They also didn't have Zach Bond at the linebacker spot, who's a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year and was a first-team All-Pro in his first year being an off-ball linebacker for Vic Fangio's defense. At the corner spot, I also think Philadelphia's better. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean are studs. Darius Slay, aging like fine wine. And at that safety position, I'll take C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship over Marcus Epps and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And Vic Fangio's a better defensive coordinator compared to Jonathan Gannon. Shane Steichen probably gets the edge on Kellen Moore, but the point here is that the Eagles are a better team now than they were against Kansas City 2 years ago. And something that I noticed walking around the Superdome on the same surface that the Eagles and Chiefs will be playing on, the Eagles a couple of years ago were in awe of the moment a little bit. Not a lot of people expected them to be there. And you could kind of tell. There's also so much extracurricular stuff and so many distractions that happen during Super Bowl week. For instance, Eagles flew to New Orleans yesterday. They have to meet with the media tonight. And it's a lot. There are thousands of people here, and as you can probably tell in the background behind me, a lot of people making noise. It's exhausting. It takes a lot of energy. Eagles also lifted earlier today prior to this. Tomorrow there's a media session. Wednesday there's a media session. Thursday there's a media session. And you're making all of these media appearances, and it does take away from the job at hand, and that's playing football. Well, here's the thing. The Eagles dealt with that a couple of years ago, and now they're better prepared for it. You can tell this team is pretty cool, calm, and collected, and they're not intimidated by the Kansas City Chiefs, who are going for their third straight Super Bowl championship. And I think that can really help Philadelphia in this game too. Lane Johnson also said something pretty notable, how halftime is longer for these Super Bowl games. Back in 2022, the Eagles didn't do a good job of making adjustments. They played a pretty good first half, and then Lane even said it. They pissed it away in the second half. I do not expect that to be the case for the Eagles this year in Super Bowl 59 because they're better prepared for the moment because they know what to expect, and that's just human nature, which brings me to this point. Spent some time with Nick Sirianni tonight, and he said, I can make adjustments and changes for nuanced things on the periphery, and I think those things are important because I think this game could be decided with razor-thin margins. For instance, walkthroughs, practices, film sessions, halftime sessions. Nick Sirianni having to make changes during the actual game. He didn't have that experience as a new coach in his second year back in 2022. He has that now. And then lastly, before I throw it to a bunch of interviews that I want to play, General Manager Howie Roseman interviewed him tonight as well. And we asked him what went in to the offseason decisions to make the flurry of moves that he did. And he said, you know what? Coming off the Super Bowl 2 years ago, last year, getting embarrassed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round, we saw Jason Kelce retire. Brandon Graham thought about retiring. We had to make some moves. It left a sour taste in our mouths. And the Eagles were very motivated to get over the collapse of last year, having lost 6 of 7 games to end the season, make some changes on the roster to come back guns a-blazing here in 2024. That's what the Eagles did. And that's a sign of a really good general manager. Knowing that you have to make changes with the way that things ended last year, knowing that you have to get better, and look yourselves in the mirror. Look at what Howie did. He signed Saquon Barkley. Should be the MVP. He's going to win NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Signed Zach Bond. Finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. First team All-Pro. Signed Mekhi Becton. Failed offensive tackle. They put him at right guard, and he ends up being a stud. Brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They got over their differences. Drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean in the first and second round. The Eagles had not drafted a corner in the first round since Lito Shepherd in 2002. Quinyon Mitchell kept falling and falling and falling. He's a starter. DeJean is a starter. To get those contributions from your rookies is huge. And so I thought it was pretty interesting, a look into the team-building strategy for Howie Roseman and what went in to this pivotal offseason for Philadelphia. A massive offseason that has yielded fantastic results for Philadelphia. And now they're one win away from winning Super Bowl 59. So much tough coverage to come all throughout the week here on Eagles Now. That's why you hit that subscribe button. What I'm going to do now, play some of the best clips that we were able to gather in interviewing Eagles players and coaches tonight. So enjoy it. Live coverage from New Orleans.
You know, obviously disappointing way to end last season in Tampa. You walk off the field and 2 of the greatest players in the history of our team are going to retire. And so, like, understanding there's a lot of work to be done and trying to find opportunities, whether it was in free agency in the draft, and try to combine them to get really good players. And you never know how that's going to go because you don't know how the draft's going to fall and you don't know really what's going to be available to you in free agency. And felt like when we had the opportunities to go after the guys we wanted, we were aggressive and feel fortunate about the outcomes to get a lot of those guys.
When you look back at the success rate you had to sign an MVP candidate, to sign a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, to draft 2 Defensive Rookie of the Year candidates, you look back and just say, you know, that's pretty amazing that we pulled that off?
Yeah, I think you're kind of still looking forward here. You know, we got obviously a great opportunity this week to play for a world championship, and I think that's really like the responsibility of the job is to try to field the best possible team that you can, to get the best possible players and the best possible people on and off the field to try to win world championships. So I feel like you're trying to do that every year. Now, it looks different every year because you don't have the same number of picks or money, but you know, I feel like every offseason we're trying to find creative ways to get better and to do better than the year before. And so I just feel like that's the responsibility.
What went into the process of signing Zach Bond, given he was primarily used as a pass rusher, and then you identify him as an off-ball linebacker, and you and Vic Fangio do a great job of him turning into an all-pro player?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you watch Zach and you saw the variety of roles, the versatility that he had in the Saints defense, before that at Wisconsin, and then, you know, you saw some of the success Coach Fangio had with some players in Miami, you know, even going back in Denver. You saw a skill set there, and then you also knew, like, there was a floor on this player. Like, he was an incredible special teamer. He could rush. And then moving kind of off the ball was a little bit of projection, but there was a lot of confidence with Coach Fangio. I think for us it was one of these things where like there was alignment, and 5 minutes into free agency we're calling him and trying to convince him to sign. So it was someone we really had targeted, and we felt really good about. Now, did we know he was going to be first team All-Pro? Certainly not, but he's got all the tools in the body. He's got all these athletic tools. He's got all the intangibles that you look for. And so just a really good player and a really good person.
From being a UDFA out of a non-power school to starting in the Super Bowl a couple of years later, how crazy has this been for you with this ride and where you are now?
It's huge. You never know you can make it that far. I was put in the right position. God put me in the right position to be here. And shout out to Howie and all the scouts that believe in me and my coaches in 22 to help me keep building. I'm still learning. This is only my third year in the league, and I'm still learning, and I want to be the best I can be. So
you were part of a defense last year, struggled, it got ugly. What has Vic Fangio done to change the defense so much?
Allow us to play fast. Not a whole lot changes throughout the year. He's confident in us. He trusts us. He knows we'll get the job done, and he allows us to make calls, make checks, however we feel. So,
what's your take on how the whole exciting whites movement has taken off?
I like it. I mean, it's funny to see. We're both embracing it right now. It's cool that everybody's on the train right now. It's sick.
Just a blessing. Just to be here, be with such great coaches and teammates and staff, and just everybody's just great. So it's been great.
It's a lot of maturity. I was young. Didn't know a lot going into the game in my first rookie year, how to handle the Super Bowl, how to handle all the theatrics and the spectacle that the Super Bowl is. But now it's just it's just like focus on the mission. There's one thing that we came here for, and that's just to focus on the mission. It's just to get the job done. Enjoy the moment. And this could be a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm very fortunate to be here twice, and you just got to enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment with your families when they come out here. Enjoy the moment with your teammates, because at the end of the day, this is the last game of the season. Like, end all to be all, this is the last game that we have to play. And who knows what our team looks like next year. It could be very different, but at the end of the day, we have to take care of the advantage in the moment that we have right now.
Yeah, I love this game, and for a lot of people that don't have the opportunity to play as long as I have, so I don't take it for granted. And I just love ball, man. I love being around my teammates. I'm an only child. Those guys are my brothers. That's all I know.